Hi and welcome to another gaming video, and in today's video I am taking a look at another Game Boy Macro, and today's macro is a crystal one. Now this is one I've just sort of made, I suppose. I had a DS Lite which I did a shell swap on a few months ago, turned it into a crystal DS Lite and absolutely loved it, but the shell, I'm assuming, wasn't the best of qualities, and a few weeks later hinge cracked, leaving a very wobbly top screen. And what can you do with a DS Lite with a wobbly top screen? Well, you've got three choices. Use it as it is. Two, use the rubber band method where you put the band across the hinges just to keep it in place. Or the third one is turn it into a macro, so you can use it as a Game Boy Advance. Not the first time I've done this. This is my first Game Boy Macro, which I made a few months ago. Quite a nice looking bit of kit. And then I went really budget basic and just made this one. So there's no modification to this one at all. No bar across the top. There's no speakers inside it, so I didn't need to modify the bottom case like I did on this one. So yeah, I thought I'm going to turn my broken crystal DS Lite into a Game Boy Macro. I love it. I love transparent tech. I'm using the same method that I use for all of my Game Boy Macros, and it's a very simple method. It's no soldering required, there's no resistors to put on the board anywhere. All you simply do is take off the top section of the DS, take apart the top screen and completely split it down, so you've got all of the cable and all of the ribbons from the top screen, and especially the little light bar. Now this is the bit that fools the DS into thinking the top screen is still there, and you can probably see it a little easier on this one, but the top screen cable runs under here and is folded flat underneath the bottom screen. You can just see it poking out there. As long as you get the cabling flat enough, well, you can see it there as well, that sort of comes out there. You tuck it underneath the bottom screen and there is no motherboard modifications need to be done. It's the method I think is the best. It does mean that you've got to put this cable underneath the screen and causes sort of, well, there's nothing is supposed to be underneath there, so it pushes the screen out a little bit. To get around that, I take off the digitizer. This is a macro after all, so you're not going to need the touch screen, and it just means that you've got a bit more play underneath the top case, and well, this case in here and the screen. But that is all you need to do. If you want a speaker in it, then you can feed one of the speakers, which I've done there, underneath, just below the Wi-Fi module. There's a bit of a space there. You take out the stylus housing, that just unscrews, and then you've got some space to put in the speaker. Not the prettiest of jobs. I think having a crystal case, it's very unforgiving. It sees all of the marks, etc. Whereas this one is a little bit neater. Being transparent plastic, you see everything, but it looks fantastic. I've cut the end of the stylus off and just super glued it in just to take up that space. You don't need the stylus, it's a macro. So that's enough talking about it. Let's plug a game in and see it in action. So take out the Game Boy Advance cover, lovely crystal one there, and pop a game in and turn it on. So you can see the reason people use DS Lites for these macros, for these Game Boy Advance mods, is because the screen is absolutely superb. You just heard some sound there, quite a decent amount of sound coming out of just one little speaker. If you are doing it and you are keeping sound inside the console, there are two speakers in a DS Lite. One has got a shorter cable than the other. Just make sure you keep the long cable. You can rip the other one off, it really doesn't make any difference. And you can see it on this one, I feed it down here and along to there. I think the cable, yeah, you can see it just there, it sort of runs along the top of the console. And you've got a lovely Game Boy Advance on an absolutely beautiful screen, and there we go. Oh. And have you ever seen a Game Boy Advance game looking so fantastic? You've got those super bright, super awesome screens on a DS Lite, and it really is the best way to play Game Boy Advance games. And if you want the full kind of Game Boy experience, then turning a DS Lite into a macro is your best option. And it is a very simple job to do. There are lots of complicated versions floating around. Like I said, somewhere I think you can just about see it. It's about there. One of the other methods is to solder a resistor on there, which will fool the DS into thinking that the top screen cable is still there, so you wouldn't need to have this. I never got that method to work. You could also put a small rubber sort of contact across there and try that. Didn't get that either. So hence I went looking for other methods, and I came across what I'm going to call the GameMobs lightbar method, and it really is simple. This one I made in about 20 minutes. It's a bit rough, it's a bit ready. Like I say, it's got nothing to it, no speakers, no case modifications. It simply is take the top screen apart, take off the hinges, move the cable underneath the screen, tape it down with a little bit of Captain tape, and that's it. Reroute the speaker if you want to, and it's a very simple method to make Game Boy Macro, and that's all you need to do. If you do take the digitizer off, which I did for this one, and I think I did it for this one as well, you can put the screen back in, put a screen lens on, and then I took the housing, just this little sort of bit from the top screen, and popped it in just to make it sort of fit a little bit more snug. Your mileage and what you do with them is it's going to vary, and it's a very easy task to do. That's my crystal Game Boy Macro. Absolutely love it. I love the fact that you can see through all of the casing. I'm a big fan of crystal tech, and now I've got another way to play Game Boy Advance games. Like, subscribe, enjoy.